Hey, Tom.
Hey, good morning. How's it going today?
It's going great. It's absolutely, life is good. How about you? How's everything?
Yeah, great. It's going very well, thank you.
Right. I think like the other day we had a really positive conversation, and I found it to be very interesting. And my brain just kept getting racked on all of these businesses that I'm thinking would be a fantastic opportunity to be a franchise. For the listeners that are out there, I want you to just give them everything. Give them the elevator pitch. Tell them what you do and how you approach businesses, and why it maybe makes sense to franchise.
Sure. Well, thank you so much for the opportunity to be here and to have the conversation today. Really appreciate it. And my name's Tom DuFore. I'm the founder and CEO of Big Sky Franchise Team. And what I found over the years of being in the franchise world and community, and I've been doing this just over 21 years now, is that one thing that stood out is I kind of think is a high level thing is if there's an independent business out there and they're thinking about expanding, franchising ought to be one they consider. And I say ought to and probably should consider. Now, does it mean they should franchise? No, but at least consider the idea of it. And as people start, as entrepreneurs and people start going down this pathway, they start thinking about, and I start thinking about in terms of, okay, well, what do we do? Well, franchising a business can be complicated, and I think it is complicated. And what we do is help our clients franchise with confidence. And we have a 3-step process that we take them through to build and develop that. But that's our quick overview. I started Big Sky. It's coming up on almost 10 years ago. I can't believe it's been that long already. We're a top-rated franchise supplier by Entrepreneur Magazine, and I've personally advised and worked with well over 600 clients that I've taken through this process. Notable names and big brands like that I've worked with over the years, like Two Men in a Truck and Blimpie and Massage Envy, are brands that I've worked with over the years. But most of my clients are small businesses that are successful. They have 1, 2, or 3 of something and say, hey, I've got a great business and I'm ready to expand.
Nice. Yeah. There's this lovely little coffee shop in Morristown that I think of, and I'm like, this is perfect. There should be one of these in every major city, kind of thing. Talk to me about when it makes sense, right? When you've set up, you had this business, it's running well, you've maybe opened a second location, you're like, and you know that you've got something special. How do you know when it's time to maybe franchise and break out?
Great question. And we get asked this a lot. I've been asked this over and over and over. And what I've found over the years is when you're ready to franchise your business, or when your business is ready, it's kind of like saying, well, when am I ready to get married? When am I ready to have kids? It's like, well, you're never really ready. You can be as prepared as you would like to be, but you're never truly ready. However, there are some elements that I've found over the years that set you up to really think about or think, okay, yes, I'm checking some boxes that would indicate that franchising would be viable for me. And so we break it down into 3 big check marks that say, well, is my business franchisable? Is this something that would work? And the first checkbox we take a look at is, do you have a profitable prototype? And as a profitable prototype, I have clients and small business owners over the years. They'll say, well, Tom, my tax return says, that I don't make any money. I say, okay, well, I understand what your tax return says. The tax code incentivizes all business owners to try to minimize taxable income. It's the way it's structured and set up. So let's talk about lifestyle when we start talking about a profitable business. Are you able to pay yourself and cover your personal expenses out of the business and pay for your lifestyle? If the answer is yes, well, then chances are the business is going to check that profitable prototype. Now, the second thing I like to take a look at is, do you have a potential customer base, meaning people who would buy your product or service outside of your market on a regional, national, or international basis? And I say at minimum, we want a regional, because if you're going to franchise, you want to be able to open up enough locations or territories that it's worth it for you to go through the rigmarole. Preferably, we like national opportunity, and then the ideal scenario is international prospects. We're working with a client right now out of Asia that we're helping them expand. They have 4,800 locations in Asia, and we're helping them expand into the United States and North America and into Western Europe right now as they're starting to expand. So you never know where you might be able where you might be going with that. And then the third bucket we like to check, or third checkbox we like to take a look at, is, can you train someone how to run and operate your business? And oftentimes the best way for me to describe it, and when I think of training, we're thinking about training a franchisee. And for an independent owner, one way to think of it is, can you train, for example, a manager or a general manager that would run your day-to-day operation for you? And for most owners, they have the skill and acumen to train. And sometimes it's really, the question might be better asked, are you willing to train and willing to go through that process? And if you're not willing to, then do you have staff or others who would be able to do it? But if you can check those three boxes: profitable prototype, you have a national potential customer base, and then an ability to train someone on how to run your business. If you could check all three of those, chances are your business is franchisable. And then that gets to the next question, which is, should I franchise my business? And that most of the time becomes more of an introspective conversation.
And from the introspective conversation, I think maybe you're alluding to growing the brand and scaling the brand and what goes along with that, right? Like, so the obvious questions in my mind come up are quality control. And then you've spent, many years creating this brand. Now I'm potentially going to share it, right, with another owner effectively. So is that something that the business owner is ready or wants to do? So how do you discuss that with your clients, right? So quality control is huge. Like you have a brand and you want to protect it. And then second is about whether or not to share that brand.
Yeah, excellent question. So on the quality control for franchising, I like to zoom out just a one slight level out of that and say, if as an owner, you intend to expand your business, period, quality control comes up. And that's whether it's franchising, company owned, through partnerships, any other kind of joint venture, whatever it might be. As you start to expand, other people are going to be fulfilling or executing on the day-to-day activities that make your business tick. And so as the founder of an organization, your ability to control that diminishes with each one that opens up. Now, here's where, so I just like to preface that to say, it just from one piece to think, I ask clients to say, well, if you're going to expand, who's likely to care more about the business? Someone that's an owner that buys into it, or a manager or an employee that you're just employing and finding them to come work for you. Well, I'm not a betting person. If I were, I would place my bet or wager on that owner that's coming in. Now, here's where franchising provides a quality control, is in the franchise agreement and within the franchise manual. These two pieces are interwoven into franchising. So the franchise agreement states that a franchisee must comply with the standard operating procedures, best practices, uphold in some franchise agreements. We've even I've had clients where they've put in their agreement that states a franchisee must maintain a minimum online reputation of 3.5 stars or better. Just as an example, that might say if they fall to 3.5 stars or below that, there's a notice to cure essentially at that point. That means something's not operating correctly. So there are controls there. The second part of that, so the agreement says that they must, and then the manual, the operations manual, is what is going to help provide those standards for a franchisee to comply with. So that's the obligation that falls back on a franchisee to say, as a franchisee, you're buying the system. And there have been several studies that have been done over the years that validate that as a franchisee, the franchisees that follow the system most closely are the franchisees that consistently perform better over time. So as a franchisee moves one standard deviation away from the best standard, overdoing it or underdoing it, their actual financial performance actually diminishes. It's the whole idea of when you're bringing on franchisees, it's just follow the system. That's why you buy a franchise, to follow the system that works. Now, so those are the obligations of the franchisee. For the obligation on the franchisor, now you're the founder. You have an obligation now to sell, train, and support. Those are the three big duties of a franchise organization. You have to sell franchises, number one. Number two, you have to train them, and number three, you have to support them. And I always like to point out that 2/3 of those, two of the three, are after the sale, because that's where the magic happens in franchising. It's after the sale. It's what kind of training and support are you providing to those franchisees? So simple things like weekly check-ins, or as the franchisee matures to monthly coaching sessions and check-ins, goes a long, 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 long way. I see franchise systems, unfortunately, where they do a sell them and forget them kind of an approach. And that is a recipe for disaster. If that's your plan, you just want to sell them and forget them and collect your royalty checks every week or every month, I would recommend not getting into franchising. But if you see yourself being a coach, that's a big word today. I want to be a coach. I want to get into coaching, or you want to be a teacher or a consultant or a trainer. Franchising essentially is that. You're helping coach and teach someone how to run your business and help support them along the way for a share in the revenue. So those are some pieces that I like to think of when I start thinking about quality control. The franchisee has an obligation to honor that. And then there's the franchisor. Your obligation is to help steer that franchisee back to the best practices within your system. So that's the first part of your question. And I forgot the second part of your question. So will you remind me of that?
Sure. No, I was talking about whether or not to share your brand, right? The apprehension to say, to bring somebody into the fold, and my mind went to you still technically own, if you've copyrighted your logo, if you've copyrighted your processes, things like that, you're still owning the process, right? So whether or not to expand and bring somebody in to be a brand ambassador, to have a say into the direction of which your company goes.
Yes, that's exactly right. So in a way I like to break down franchising is it's actually a lease. I compare it to leasing a car or leasing a vehicle or a piece of equipment or something. The franchisee is leasing your brand name, and they're leasing your system of operation. And it is on loan or on lease to them for the duration of the contract, as long as all parties are honoring the parts of the contracts, et cetera, and compliance. And at the end of the agreement, essentially, the franchisee has to turn everything back in. And so, for example, there are a few states where this is not where non-competes are not enforceable, but outside of a couple of states, the franchisee is not allowed to just buy your business. Let's just say you're a home painter, you paint homes, or you are a local coffee shop, for the example that you gave. Well, all your recipes, all your processes, all your marketing strategies and everything, a franchisee in most franchise agreements has a 2-year non-compete. So if they leave the system for any reason at all, whether it's for their own doing or forced out, they are not allowed to operate a competing business for 2 years within their market or within a certain radius around another franchisee. So there's a way to protect that intellectual property versus, for example, if it were an employee who worked for you and were to go and start a competing business, those are very, very hard non-competes, even if they do exist, to enforce. Most places, those types of non-competes in today's world just are not likely to be enforceable.
Yeah. I wanted to ask a question, sort of doubling back, and I think you touched on this a little bit. Let's say I go and I check all these boxes that you've laid out for us, right? I've checked all three. I've got a market that's outside of my general area. My business is profitable, and what was the third one?
A willingness or an ability to train someone on how to operate your business.
Okay, and so my business is profitable and I'm ready to expand. Why should I franchise instead of just opening a new location? Maybe this is my third or fourth one. When does it become unsustainable to continuously be the 100% owner or working within a small group and retaining all of the liabilities?
Yeah. So I'm not one that tends to say it's all or nothing. It's all franchising, or it's all company owned, or it's all partners, or it's all something else. My approach is wanting, if you're starting to expand with company owned locations, at the end of the day, company owned locations will produce more cash in your checking account. Now, profitability wise, in most cases, franchising royalty revenue is more profitable than company owned generated cash flow. However, it's smaller amounts of cash coming in. So it just depends on your style and approach. For someone that's willing to continue to open company owned locations, I encourage it. I don't think there's anything wrong with it. And in fact, I find that strategy, because now it gives you more options. For example, if you are expanding, you open a company owned location, and maybe you just can't seem to find a good manager. You're on a rotating schedule of new managers coming in and out. That might be a great candidate to actually sell it off as a franchise. And so franchising complements a company-owned strategy, where some brands are predominantly company-owned, and then they sell franchises in areas or territories that they don't want to open. And then the flip side can be true too, where someone decides that franchising is a primary expansion strategy and are looking to grow in that direction. What franchising allows you to do, because it's an inverse, it's you use the word very well, perfect word, it was liability. In company-owned locations or a partnership, all of the liability falls back to a single source, generally the founder. All liabilities fall on that founder. The financial liabilities, the loans, the personal guarantees, the insurance, all of the potential liabilities that come with any business. In franchising, those liabilities actually fall back in most cases on the franchisee. So you're now using other people's money to grow the business, and the franchisee is personally guaranteeing that money, whether it's a loan, whether they're bringing on investors or partners into the business, that franchisee is funding it. The second piece is time. The franchisee is now managing. I say you've got money. I should say the second one's management. It's my alliteration. So money and management. The franchisee is going to be responsible for that local day-to-day management. If an employee doesn't show up, that local franchisee manages and deals with that. And then the third reason franchising makes sense is it's just, you're able to multiply. So money, management, multiply. You can just grow faster. Now, does that mean you're going to sell 100 in a year? Well, averages would indicate probably not. And in my experience, anyone like me in my role that's talking about or promising selling 100 in a year, I would be very cautious. I would have a lot of caution with that person. Most franchises sell 1, 2, 5, 10 a year, that kind of cadence. One of my favorite examples is a client I worked with. He has a sandwich shop, and he started franchising about 8 years ago, and he sold over that time window about 14 franchises during that time window. And now he's ready to really take off and start to launch. And I love that story, because I think of how many clients I've met with over the years, or prospects I've met over the years, that maybe said, well, I don't know if I want to franchise. Well, time just passed, and all he did was just sell a franchise to a customer or someone who happened to come in, very little marketing, and all of a sudden he's got 14 sold in an 8-year window that otherwise he would have just had his 1 or 2 sandwich shops. And there's nothing wrong with that. But just by being aware and having it franchised, he was able to take those opportunities as they came to him. To circle back to your original question of franchising versus company owned, I don't like to think of it as an either or. I'd like your audience to think, and the people who listen into this, that how can I maybe see franchising as to complement my existing growth strategy, or maybe become a primary and my existing strategy complements what I'm doing?
Yeah, I love that. Actually, your example of opening a company-owned store and then potentially down the road franchising it, that's not something that I had thought about. And that's a really interesting concept there.
Yeah, it's something that for my clients that like company-owned units, I encourage them to consider that as a strategy. Open a company-owned unit. That's what Jersey Mike's did early on in the beginning. They'd have a grand opening crew. They'd go and open up a company-owned location for 6 months or a year, kind of get it supercharged, and then they'd sell it off. And then they'd go do it again and sell it off and do it again and sell it off. And it takes a little bit of time for that momentum to build. But 5 years in, 7 years in, you're really going to see the compounding effect take place.
Yeah, you can kind of get them in, get them rolling, and then hand it off. That's cool.
Yes.
Talk to me a little bit about how Big Sky approaches client acquisition. How do you meet the people that you're going to work with? How I have to imagine, in my line of work, I'm an employee benefits consultant for USI, and I run into people all the time where they're like, "Hey, I want to work with you," and I'm just too stretched for time sometimes. I'm like, "Hey, I have to be a little selective about the people that I do work with," and I have to imagine that's similar for you as well. So you have somebody that comes to you. How do you determine whether you're going to work with them, and then also like, how do you maybe hunt for like larger fish that you are trying to like prospect clients that you really, really do want to work with?
Yeah. So our business, how we generated about half or so of our business is through referrals. So people we've done business with in the past, people that I personally know or have known through franchising for just being around in the business for a long time. So that's about where half comes from. About a quarter comes through industry specific franchise shows or trade shows or industry specific shows and events where we go and meet people. And then the third is just through internet marketing, just various forms of some internet marketing. Now, how we determine who we work with, we are not a high volume shop comparatively to others in our space. And so we have enough volume where we can support our staff, where it's not just me. We've got about 12 people on our team. And so we've got experts in each of these different verticals. But at the end of the day, we're a small family business. And what I find interesting is private equity and venture capital has surged into franchising in the last 10 years. My competitors are getting acquired by private equity and venture capital. And so I find it interesting that we, being 100% family owned, I own 100% of the company. That's a differentiator. I would have never thought that 10 years ago that would be the case, but here we are. And for us, when we're looking to identify clients, we're really looking for a cultural fit. We're looking for someone that values more of a personal touch, someone that values more of a bit of a hand-holding. And for the clients that understand what that means and probably do business in a similar way, we tend to be a great fit for that. For others where they just want the cheapest, or they just want the fastest, or they just want something like that, where there's another value that supersedes more of some hand-holding and guidance, personal guidance through this, they're probably going to find someone else that they would rather work with. So it kind of self-selects, and I'd say about 8 years ago or 7 years ago, I really crystallized our core values as a company. And once that happened, our clientele really started to become very consistent in terms of the kinds of clients that we were attracting, which fit well with us. Our number one value is win-win relationships. And we really seek to say, where's the win for our client first? If we can't find that, there's a problem. So where's the win for them first? Then we say, okay, well, it's a two-way street. So it's a mutual gain in a relationship. So where's the win back for us? That's usually the easiest thing to find. And then and part of the reason I put that in is protection for me. I'm a people pleaser. I have no problem admitting that. So it was easy for me to be railroaded by my clients. And then the third piece is relationship. We're relational in nature. So my clients from 8 years ago, 10, I still have clients from companies I worked for before I started my business that still call me for advice. Hey, Tom, I was thinking about this. What do you think? Or, hey, Tom, what do you think about that? That's a kind of relationship that I like to build and we like to build as an organization.
Yeah, I love that. I've spent the last probably 6 years or so in industries or in jobs or roles where I was a high service model, right? Not the cheapest, definitely not the cheapest, but definitely one of the best service models. And when you work with those types of clients that are really purchasing or making their decisions based off of culture and based off of service, it's very rewarding. It really is. I know exactly what you mean.
Yeah, agree.
So I would like to know a little bit about where the company's going in the next, let's say, 5 years, or if there's any updates. The economy is, obviously on the forefront of everyone's mind. So how would you maybe address that, right? expanding a business now might be a little daunting for people.
Yeah, well, this is where franchising, it tends to be a solution in a vibrant economy or a down economy. And the reason why is, in a vibrant economy, people are enthusiastic, they're excited, they're willing to, it's generally easier to come by to get money, to get loans, to get investors and such in that regard. It's great. In a down economy, franchising looks really, really good because you, as the founder, as the franchisor, you're not doling out all the cash. You're not taking on all the responsibility. You're diversifying that. It splits it up, like I had mentioned before. So in a down economy, we actually tend to see franchising do well. And the reason is because people are getting downsized. Employees are downsized. And we saw this during COVID. We saw this during the real estate bust in 08 and 09. We see this happen where people get downsized, or the fear of being downsized. Someone generally aged between about 40 to 55, that's the majority of franchise buyers, says, I'm not going through another downturn. I'm tired of this, or they've been laid off. They get a pink slip, whatever. And they say, this is the last time this is happening to me. I'm taking control of my own destiny, and I'm going to start my own business. And then that thought process, not all of them, but a percentage of them say, well, but I'm too nervous to go and do this on my own. So I want to buy a franchise. And so that leads the buyers down the pathway to finding a franchise where they want to buy more of a proven system. So I found that downtimes in franchising, we generally will see franchise sales stay flat or increase in a down economy. And when it's thriving, it sometimes actually a thriving economy is a competitor to the franchise world, because people are gainfully employed. They're getting the bonuses they expected. They're getting the end of, the quarterly commissions and so on that they were planning on. It's a little harder for them to want to leave their jobs during those windows as well.
That makes perfect sense. Obviously, when interest rates are low, money's, affordable, money's cheap, then it behooves you to follow that company owned model potentially.
Correct.
And then when you're on a down economy, you can leverage somebody else's, right? Because like you said, perfect. If you're downsized, then it might make more sense to just open your own company and create yourself a job, right?
Yeah.
I love the conversation turning towards the franchisee a little bit. I'm curious about how you find franchisees. Is that something part of what your solution offers? How are you finding people to actually pick up these locations and buy? Is it a partner? Do you work with private equity? How do you find people to buy the actual franchise locations?
Yeah, great question. So we do support our franchisees or our clients in a variety of ways to help them find potential franchisees. We help them build out marketing strategies and marketing plans. We also offer outsourced franchise sales support. So we're in the trenches as well, figuring out and how to generate leads and screen and qualify candidates and so on. And I've done some research on this to help put some numbers to franchising. There are a lot of best guesstimates in franchising on things, but I like to see what the data says. And so in franchising, there's an annual franchise development report that's produced each year. And then there are a variety of other franchise sales reports. And so I looked at all the data, and what I found is franchise sales tend to come through three primary sources, or three primary channels is where they come through. And the number one source for franchise sales, probably no surprise, is the internet, and just a variety of internet leads. That includes meta ads and PPC. That includes company websites and SEO, but about half, it's almost exactly half. And I'm talking conversions, not just franchise leads. I like to talk about conversions because leads are basically like clicks on an ad campaign. It's like, I don't really care about the clicks. Did the person submit a form, and was it the right kind of person we're looking to attract? And so about half will come through internet leads. And by the way, the conversion percentage on internet leads is about 0.4%, to help give your listeners a perspective on that. So It's about one sale out of every 250 leads, just to help set it. And I like to have that conversation with my clients. A lot of them come in thinking, oh man, someone who walks in the door like they do at my coffee shop, they're buying a cup of coffee. It's like, well, that's not how it works in franchising. You might need 250 people to walk in to get that first cup of coffee sold. So that's one. The second big category that we look at then is referrals. Much like any business, referrals and referral marketing is critical, and about 20 to 30%, depending on the survey and the year, come through of franchise sales come through referrals, and they have the highest conversion rate. It's almost 9% of referrals convert into a franchise sale. And then the third big category are franchise brokers. And these groups account for about 15 to 20% of franchise sales, depending on the year. So those are the three big categories. A lot of folks who sit where I do will, in my opinion, falsely give a false impression that franchise brokers, all you have to do is franchise, and these franchise brokers can't wait to start selling your brand. And to me, it's a misnomer. Most franchise brokers are hesitant to sell new brands because they don't know, they work on a commission only basis. They're like a real estate agent. And so when they send over their precious lead to you, they want to have confidence that you're going to be able to close it. And so they're much more likely to get a sale out of a brand that has 20 or 50 or 100 franchises than a startup. Eventually you'll get there. So that's where that 15 to 20% of franchise sales come through brokers. So anyway, those are the three big categories for franchise sales. And we help our clients go through that and prepare a plan and a strategy and how to do it.
Wow. Tom, it's like an onion. I feel like I keep pulling back layers, and I feel like every question I ask leads to another question with it. It's like I could talk to you like all week and still have questions, but I wanted to, I always like to end these sort of on a real positive note. Tell me about something optimistic in your industry. Tell me about, what do you feel like is in the near future for positive opportunity for people out there?
Yeah. So I'm always, my whole career, I've always been cautious on fads and endorsing fads for franchising or any other type of it's unknown really. However, in this case, what I'm going to share is one that I wasn't sure if it was a fad, but it is sticking around, and it's the interest and continued expansion of private equity and venture capital into the franchise world. And so it's really the first time in my career that I have absolute confidence to say that if you franchise your business, there absolutely is a serious exit strategy in the future. And in the future might mean I see exits now where private equity groups and partner groups and these franchise conglomerates are acquiring brands with 5 and 10 franchises. Now, your valuation obviously will be a lot less, but you start getting approaching 50 franchises, 100 franchises, you can almost name a number. You'll have multiple suitors looking to buy your business. 10, 15 years ago, it was, in my opinion, a bit of a pipe dream. It's like, well, maybe you might be lucky. But in today's world, it's just kind of a darling child of private equity, venture capital. They're realizing the opportunity with these royalty income streams are more like annuities, and all of the revenues diversified in multiple outlets spread out across the country. So if there happens to be a natural disaster in one area, well, it might impact some of your revenue, but not all of it. Or if there happens to be some other event that goes on, or that you're not totally impacted system-wide. So it's a really interesting thing. So that's something that I would say is very, very realistic, and so much so that our clients start calling me 6 months, a year into franchise and say, Tom, I'm getting these emails and letters from private equity groups. I've sold 2 franchises. What are they doing? I said, they're just planting seeds. They're just trying to get on your radar. So when you're ready, they want you to call them. So it's a very real thing today.
Wow. Super interesting. Tom, if somebody wanted to get in touch with you and they wanted to be, Big Sky's next franchise client, how could they get in touch with you? How do they start the conversation?
Yeah, best place to start. We always offer a free consultation, and you could schedule time directly with me or someone on my staff and team. Be happy to spend time with you. There's no fees. We charge no fees until we both agree to do business together. So there's no secret hourly billing or thing like that. The best place to go is our website, bigskyfranchiseteam.com, bigskyfranchiseteam.com. You'll find our scheduling link. You'll find tons of free resources. We have podcasts and blogs and all kinds of great information if you're just looking to learn more.
Tom, thank you so much for being a guest today. It's been enlightening as always. I think our conversations always, like I said, leave me with more questions, but in an excited way, because I think about all the different opportunities that are out there for small business owners. So thank you again. Really appreciate you.
Well, thanks for having me, Alex. I appreciate it.